I'm very pleased to introduce Dawn to you. The Brand Greens have endorsed Dawn Jecks, Safety Bay resident, as the candidate for Brand in the next federal election. Born and bred in WA, Dawn's had a long career in laboratory operations, in civil construction, resource development and the infrastructure sector, and in training, technical and management roles. She's gone up and up and up. Well known as the driving force behind Hands Off Point Perrin campaign to protect ratepayers and local businesses from a possibly destructive private canal housing disaster at Point Perrin, Dawn is an intrepid and fearless campaigner. Despite her busy life with a full-time job and caring for her teenage son, Dawn is also working on several other key issues that would benefit the people of Brand. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you Dawn Jecks. Please give
Thanks everyone for coming today, and I hope you'll find this informative, interesting and somewhat pleasant afternoon for you. James mentioned what I do for a job, and actually that's what led me to get involved in politics. That and the fact that I've always been someone who's felt compelled to speak up if I see something that's happening that's unfair. So when I heard about this silly idea to build a canal development in the middle of our regional park at Point Perrin, given my job background, I could see straight away that it was going to be an engineering and financial disaster. And the more I researched it, I just couldn't see, how they could go ahead with such a silly, flawed proposal. So I could essentially, given my background in civil construction, I've been involved in this sort of construction projects from all over the states since I was in my 20s, and I've hit my 50s now. So I've seen a lot of stuff happen over the state. And I'm all for development, sensible, smart stuff, but I could see this was going to be such a dumb idea. So I was looking around and I thought, well, gee, who's pushing it? And it panned out that it was essentially vested interests were behind it. A small group of people who were pushing it. And I could see that the community was being fed misinformation, half-truths and complete omissions about what was really proposed. And it was sort of made out to be an exciting idea for the community. So, and I was so disappointed that the MLA for Rockingham, Mark McGowan, was doing nothing to stop it either, and he continues to sit on the fence. So I figured out that if enough people knew about the facts, the real facts, that there would be enough public pressure to make them stop it. And so I founded the Hands Off Point Perrin campaign with the sole aim of getting media coverage to essentially get the truth out there. Because I figured if enough people, as I say, if enough people know, but it's a huge job when you've got the spin doctors, well-funded spin doctors of opponents out there, all the time selling it. They've done a bit of a divide and conquer job with some of the local groups that have the fishing club and the yacht club. It's pretty tough going. But anyway, I think it's a fight worth fighting for. And thank you so much because there's a fair chunk of people here today that have come here as well because they support me in what I'm trying to do there in terms of getting the truth out and trying to stop this silly idea. So it's back in 2006 that I first heard about it. And again, as I say, with my background, I could see that was flawed from the beginning. And as to how I came to join the Greens, at about this same time that I started campaigning on the Point Perrin issue around the 2006-2007 date, I'd heard Christine Milne, who is now our new Greens leader, speaking out on the radio about how David Hicks, I don't know how good your memory is, but how David Hicks was being made out to be a homegrown terrorist by some federal politicians who are looking to generate fear and get political gain out of it. And the member for Brand at the time, Kim Beazley, who was also the opposition leader, he was silent on this. And so I thought finally when someone in political life had the guts to speak out, it was Christine Milne. And she actually had the courage to call them on the misinformation that was being promoted publicly. So I did something that I'd never done before. I emailed a politician and said, thanks for your courage and your wisdom, for having the guts to speak out publicly on what was a very sensitive and politically charged issue at that time. And I was surprised when her office emailed back saying thanks and why not check out our policies on our website. And I thought, oh, okay, we'll have a look. I mean, I'd always voted Green, and I felt they were the best of the bunch, but I had no clear idea of the extent of their policies and their agenda for the country. So I checked out the website, and essentially, the day I checked out the website, my life changed forever. Sounds corny, but I was blown away. And I get a bit emotional. It's been huge for me, huge. And essentially, they've got policies that cover all aspects of society. Health, education, poverty, economy, the list goes on. We don't have enough time to go through them all here today, but I just thought I'd highlight a few that I think are quite relevant to the seat of brand. But before I do that, what I did want to share with you was how the Greens have made a difference during this term of power. And this is the big, there's a lot of great stuff out there that you just won't hear about in the mainstream media. You know, quite a few of you probably realise that, you know, the mainstream media is owned by the big media moguls, the Murdoch Press, etc. And you're just not going to hear all the good news stories that really are out there. And so, of course, their biggest enemy is the Greens, because the Greens are a party who do not accept political donations from big business. So they don't want us in power because, you know, we're going to hold them to account. You know, we're going to take the edges off a lot of their agenda that's quite nasty, really, in terms of stealing from the people. Sounds radical, but, you know, I think you sort of get what I'm talking about there, about making decisions in the best interests of the big businesses and their mates and the miners, etc., and not really thinking about the people around that we've got around town and the people in the community who are living in their cars, who can't get dental work, and their health suffering as a consequence. Since I've become a Greens candidate in the last few elections, it's meant that I've actually got out there and talked to people, and it's really, I mean, I knew that the people were having it tough, but you actually get a real face-on-face with people. I remember an old gentleman I met outside the IGA, we had a bit of a stall when I first sort of got involved in politics, and he was just telling me, he was an old guy, how he was having all sorts of issues because he had dental problems that he needed to get fixed, but he couldn't afford the money, so it was making him sick. So, you know, there are a lot of things out there that we could do so much better if we had our priorities right. And this is why, as I said, I joined the Greens, because again, I was just blown away with how smart, you know, their policies are. You know, there's a lot of myths out there that we're a bunch of greenies and tree huggers, but hello, it may have started off as an environmental group, but I tell you what, today, very mainstream, very focused, very smart in terms of what they're proposing to do, planning to do. And I urge you all to check out the policies on the website, because they're just awesome, the way they're set out, and there's so much substance there. There's no slogans, you know, with nothing to back it up, like, you know, who has out there, who's hoping to be PM, and I hope to God he doesn't. So we're here today to be able to talk about how we stop him from getting complete control. So last election, like I said, I wanted to share with you some of the things the Greens have done in terms of making a difference during this last period of Parliament, where they've shared power with Labor and the Independents. So last election, 1.6 million Australians voted to give the Greens a strong voice in our federal Parliament, and together we have achieved, and these were part of the conditions of the power sharing arrangement with the government. So free dental care for 3.4 million children, and a huge injection of funds into public dental health to make sure that it gets to the people who need it most. Now, you won't read about that in the paper, but it's actually true. That the Greens, it was a condition that we support the Gillard government to make that happen. Community radio funding is now, community radio is continuing to have funding to stay abreast of technology, which is not a big hitter, but it means something to the community. Community radio is really important because you're getting diverse views and voices, and you get people like us being able to get on the radio and talk about the issues that they care about, so they're not controlled by the media moguls. It's a good way of getting information out there, the truth out there about different issues that we're all concerned about. Children in Aboriginal communities now are better protected because of Senator Rachel Seward managed to get through the Opal fuel to stop the kids sniffing the fuel and decimating the communities. Well, WA Green Senator did that. You know, she made that happen, and you won't hear about that. That's huge for the state. It's huge for families. It's huge for the community. It's really important. Again, you won't, you know, you wouldn't hear about that unless you were sort of across what they were all doing. Also, a parliamentary budget office has now been established to keep politicians honest about spending promises during elections. So, of course, we know during election campaigns you get spun all sorts of stuff. So that's something really important that make sure there's a bit of transparency, a bit of truth out there, a little bit of honesty, hopefully, that the Greens made happen as a condition. The Clean Energy Act, wow, this is just, to me, the most awesome thing that's happened for us and our kids and our future generations, because climate change is something that I've been concerned about for quite a long time, and I just think it doesn't need to be, there's so much we can do there. So the Clean Energy Act was because we've got that now, and there's a price on pollution now, and we're investing the money in clean energy. And it's already working. Energy pollution is more than 7% down already. That's just giving people incentives to not waste power. The Clean Energy Finance Commission, we've now got $10 million in clean energy investment, which is going to start rolling out on Monday, and it's to be invested in clean renewable energy. And the idea with that, it brings energy efficiency and creates jobs and helps householders with their power bills. So the three big things that I'm keen to push in Brand, I mean there's lots of different policy areas, but one of the big ones is, I don't know how many people have got solar panels. When you look around, it's amazing when you start looking, when I going for walks lately, how many people have got solar panels on their roof. It's just huge. And it's so sensible, because the more people have got solar panels, they're not having to build new infrastructure for these big, expensive coal-fired power stations, etc., for the 20 hours a year, I think it is, where there's the peak. So it's just so sensible, it's just so smart. Well, the Greens have an initiative that's called the Greens Fair Pay for Clean Power. And the idea with that is to make sure residents are paid a fair price for the clean local power that they produce on their rooftops. And the other thing too, in Brand, about 25% of people who work in Brand are involved in manufacturing construction. So again, we're looking at increased uptake of solar panels, people getting paid fairly for what they feed back into the grid. It generates more likely to get more jobs locally, given that there's a lot of people, as I say, in construction and manufacturing, as well as saving residents on electricity costs. The other issue too that I've been advocating for, along with the Greens and trying to get the message out there, is getting a fair return on our mineral resources. I mean, I work in fields associated with mining, and I've said it's important. I don't have a problem with mining, and we need all that, but I think it's important for our once-only resources that we get a fair return. And when you consider that our mining, a lot of the big mining companies, when you look at 80% of them are foreign-owned, so the dividends are going overseas. So the Greens has been pivotal in trying to push for a stronger mining tax, because the idea is we've got the money from that can be used for public services. I mean, I'm a parent of a teenage son attending a local school, and I've seen how underfunded they are. It's really quite takes me aback. And also a more caring society, this is what we're also working for. So a fairer mining profits tax would deliver much needed funding for TAFEs, for hospitals, public transport, environment, without taking a cent from small to medium-sized mining companies, because that's the point. The Greens don't want to shut down mining. It's just the really big super profits and the big miners that we think they should be putting a bit back more into the country. Universal access to publicly funded dental care, again, hugely important. Mental health services, there's a lot of room for improvement there. That's high on our agenda. And also boosting payments to single parents on New Start. We've got the silly situation now where you've got, a single mother trying to do the right thing, juggle the kids, trying to go to university, get an education, and then she's put on New Start, i.e. unemployment benefits. She can't afford textbooks, transport, childcare, so she's back to where she was. So, we believe that really needs to be pushed. It's a $50 increase to New Start. And the good thing, it's all doable, because I remember when 2007 or whenever it was, we were pushing for $30 a week for the age pension to be increased. And we were banging on about it for years. But guess what? It happened eventually. So to me, all these things are doable if there's enough public knowledge, pressure, and people vote for it. This is why I'm keen to get out there what we're about, so people will vote for it by supporting us. And just finally, and I'll wind up there, our environmental protection laws. I tell you what, they've blown me away. This Point Perrin debacle, I had no idea. I used to think the EPA, they're a government body. No, they're actually full of corporates and ex-Woodside executives. And we have a situation too, which really shocked me. Of course, we're all shocked with the EPA recommending conditional approval. Because just the average Joe locally can see it's done from so many angles. It's just not going to work. And it's going to be the taxpayers that's going to end up footing the bill when it all goes awry. And in fact, the Port Geograph Bay people, residents, they've been fighting for 10 years or 12 years to get their mess at Port Geograph Bay fixed up, which was EPA approved. And they've been fighting for years, and then finally the state governments had to use taxpayer funds to bail them out, and it's $28 million to fix it. Now, we're going to have a much bigger problem at Point Perry if it goes ahead. The Port Geograph will just you know, because there's so many more issues there. And the thing is, you might think, well, gee, you know, how's it got this far? Well, the thing is, I had no idea, and this shocked me. I mean, a trainer in vocational training in civil construction and all that, everything I do is evidence-based. So I'm thinking, okay, where's the evidence? Where's, you know? And reading through the documents, I've discovered they're not required to be grounded in truth. So the developers are the ones who write the reports and dish up the information for the EPA and for the minister to make his decision on. And the counter arguments to that have to come from you and me, the community. With our, what money have we got? I mean, you know, anybody who's involved in activism knows that you know, we've got to earn a living, but we've also got to spend our own money and time trying to fight these greedy buggers. But of course, the laws, they're weak and they need improving. So I think this Point Perrin debacle is a really good example that should bring home to people in WA why our environmental protection laws are stacked and they need fixing. And I'm going to do everything I can to put pressure to bear to make that happen. And the other thing too is, Scott will speak more to this, about Tony Abbott and what he's planning to do, but it's all around. Tony Abbott has said if he wins government, he's going to get rid of his so-called red and green tape. I mean, I'm thinking, is this the so-called red and green tape that allowed the EPA to give conditional approval? Hello, you know, they're already a mess, and he wants to make them even weaker. So I rest my case. Thanks.